church today is a little different than when everybody just had Sunday school and focused on missions on Wednesday night. It wasn't too long ago, just a few years ago, that probably 8 to 9 out of 10 Southern Baptist churches had a similar weekly structure to how they did ministry. But as we've come to look more at different models of ministry, and we've looked at questioning some of the ways we inherited to do ministry and how they were effective, the models have begun to shift and some things have really combined, and we find ourselves going, how do we do group life? Do we still do groups surrounded by a worship service at the church, maybe with a classroom model? Do we shift to where adults are meeting in groups during the week that are separate from what we do at worship on Sunday morning? And then we start asking the question, well, what about children and what about youth? But Dr. Stone and Dr. Stewart really lead adult groups and in our educational curriculum here at the seminary. And Dr. Stone's going to start us with talking about what group strategy do you begin to adopt in your church? And I know Dr. Stewart's going to chime in as well.
Well, I think there's a couple of factors that are going to play in how you make your decision and which strategy approach. Of course, probably paramount may be space. If you're limited for space, you have to be creative and come up with some alternatives. However, I think as in the education realm, one of the things we want to do is we want to present a holistic process for our families and for each person that's in the life of the church to be growing spiritually. And there's great value to people of all age, not only growing at home, but partnering with the church in some way, whatever that looks like. So from a foundation side, one of the things I like to look at is our curriculum. How are we helping all of our children, youth, young adults, adolescents, or whatever, grow all the way through, and how is that curriculum tied together across the lifespan? And that there's got to be connections and firm transitions that go for there, that tie those together. And connecting what happens at home and church is critical. My experience is people's spiritual background, their previous experience, all can shape what they're comfortable with, and this is going to be an interesting topic because there's so many models out there now. But I think we need to provide meaningful learning experiences for everybody in some way, in addition to home life and just a worship service.
I think for children, the important thing is that they are involved in Bible study, wherever that might happen. Whether that's in a home or in a Sunday school, a classroom, not necessarily a Sunday school classroom, but a classroom with other children, that they be included in worship, wherever that might be happening, that they be given the opportunity to serve and to engage in missions. Because we have to remember that there are many children who have already made the decision to be Christ followers. They are on mission themselves, and so what they don't need is child care while adults do the work of the church and study and do, but they also need to be involved, in that. So it's really my position, I would say, even from the youngest of children, that they be involved, integrated, if you will. There's a lot of even research out there, if we wanted to get academic about that, that shows that children develop beautiful spiritual practice that engages them even into their young adulthood when they have been exposed to it with a group of adults who are significant to them. So even if it was 3 families that met in my living room over the course of time, and my child was exposed to that and engaged in the prayer process and heard those prayer requests and prayed for them, it's not so much necessary to have a classroom with just 3rd graders, as much as it is that they are involved, like Dr. Stone said, holistically. They're being given the opportunity to engage with God's Word and with God's people. And that's the important thing for children, that it's modeled for them, and that they're included in that process. It's not so much about their age grade peers.
Dr. Stewart, you lead a class in our curriculum in our division, Disciple Making Through Small Groups, and I know you present different models for doing group life and some considerations. We're seeing more and more churches have some type of hybrid model. And what would be some best practices for coming to a decision for your church, for our students?
Well, one of the things you have to think about is your actual mission and vision of the church, and that goes. I mean, we can certainly take the biblical mission and say that, okay, on the disciple making continuum, where is evangelism, and then where is spiritual formation and edification? Where are those things happening? Because we can become closed groups for all
Right.
ages, and when that happens, the church is not impacting the community.
Right.
And I think that the big question is, are we making disciples of the communities that our churches exist within?
Right.
And as a church, and certainly as a denomination, that's something that we're going to have to
Right.
address. And so, hence, all these models and hybrids are out there now. We do know that through learning theory that the smaller the group, the more, I guess, the quicker the learning occurs.
Right.
And the deeper the learning occurs. And so, but the question is, due to the urgency of the gospel, how small do we get, and how long do we stay there?
Right.
Because we've got to take the gospel to the nations,
Right.
to the people. So, so with all these different models, I think you have to evaluate your internal health of the church. You have to look at the condition of the community to see if your community exists primarily of emerging adults and below, and then you need to come up with some type of model that's going to be outside the life of the church to reach those in
Right.
small groups, and then the issue becomes training and developing leaders. So.
Some of the models that we embraced for the last 50 years until the most recent decade or two were tied often to the public school system, that our churches reflected the educational models that
That's
were in
right.
the culture. And one of the things that's happened the last 20, 25 years particularly is we've seen a major shift in those educational models, secular models. We've also seen an increasingly ethnic population in our country. And those different ethnic groups and culture groups change. I was in the church I last served. We had people from 40 countries with 30 different languages. They all brought unique ways of how they related to each other. I mean, just doing language was different. When we had folks from Burundi and Venezuela, and they don't fit in the same group just because you got language challenges and cultural challenges. So all of those things can shape, and the non-schooling movement, the homeschooling, the model that we use at church has got to find a way to integrate that way that people have learned to learn into our church life.
And we're all busy. We got things going on. I know families do, and Wednesday night's not sacred anymore.
right.
No, and
And Sunday
right.
morning, not always.
And we know the Sunday evening schedule was based off of the agricultural harvest schedule from years ago. So there's different things that are
Right.
in place now culturally, which
Right.
do
We're a
impact
24/7
how we plan.
culture
Right.
now.
Well, and when we look at the kinds of things that we're even being taught, like even with children and with youth, Bible skills, just basic Bible knowledge. If we're not gathering together at the church and having church leaders teach these things, then who is? And that's once again back to parents. And so part of our responsibility as a church then is to help parents who are in these groups, parents of children or teenagers or even themselves if they're new believers. How do we help them learn those Bible skills and to help their children know them as well? Because if we're in a model where we don't have a church plant, and so we're meeting in homes, or we are a church plant, we meet in somebody's living room, how are we helping them to be proficient at the study of God's Word, whatever age they are? And that's a challenge.
I think
It's going to be a challenge in all of our ministry environments to figure out group life in a changing culture. And you have many things to consider. So what we have done as practice is get before the Lord individually and pray. And I believe He will guide our steps. He will direct our paths. And so I believe that you need to get before the Lord and pray. Also, I would encourage you to consider your community. You may think you know your community, but get out and be sure you know the community, the lostness, and what really reflects the community. Also consider your space. Consider what you can accomplish. Consider the leaders that are needed. Maybe curriculum is a consideration. Consider how you're going to train and equip your people for the strategy that you adopt. And then also consider how you're going to continue to invite lostness to be a part of your group. And so those are just some things you may need to consider. We don't have all the answers because all of our churches are still trying to figure it out as well. But we do know the importance of committing to a group strategy that you're willing to faithfully every day work so it may be effective to reach some and make disciples.